Before we begin our story, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more, and drop a comment with your feedback on our stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The amphitheater of Galactic Academy buzzed with a quiet, anticipatory energy as students of countless species found their seats on ancient, curving stone benches. A massive holographic display hovered over the lectern, its projections a shifting tapestry of cosmic scenes. At the center of it all stood Professor Xel'Voran, a being whose 4 luminous eyes and sinuous tentacles lent him an air of both wisdom and otherworldly mystery. His voice, resonant and deliberate, filled the vast chamber. "Settle down, younglings," he intoned, his tone echoing as if through the corridors of time. The cacophony of diverse languages stilled, and every creature, from tentacled scholars to clawed students and bioluminescent beings, turned their gaze upon him. Today was no ordinary day, it was a day set aside to study a topic that had ignited debates for millennia: the rise of humanity, known across the galaxy as the sovereigns of the cosmic dominion. Professor Xel'Voran's tentacles curled gently as he surveyed the eager faces before him. His mind, ever inquisitive and burdened by the weight of his own history, fondly remembered his early days as a student, poring over forbidden texts about the Terrans. Though not a Terran himself, he had come to revere their story as one of hope and paradox. His voice softened as he continued, "Today, we discuss one of the most astonishing ascensions in galactic history. The rise of the Terrans." A murmur rippled among the students, some nodding in awe, others whispering in disbelief. For most of them, humanity was both a mythic enigma and a cornerstone of galactic progress. They were liberators to some, conquerors to others, Xel'Voran said. Yet there is no denying that they changed everything. With a dramatic gesture, the professor activated the holographic display. An image materialized, a pale blue planet orbited by a solitary moon. "Sol 3, or Earth, as you know it," he declared. Once an unremarkable world, its progress was erratic, a tapestry woven with moments of brilliance and intervals of catastrophe. As the hologram shifted, showing a modest, almost crude starship, a marvel of its age, it was clear that humanity's foray into space was fraught with both wonder and danger. Xel'Voran's voice grew animated. The Xenthari were the first species to make contact with the Terrans. In an act of chance, a scouting vessel crash-landed on Mars due to an engine failure. The humans, with little experience but abundant compassion, launched a rescue mission. The Xenthari had expected hostility, but what met them was kindness. That, my students, was Earth's first gift to the galaxy. A student with gleaming, reflective scales hesitantly raised a clawed limb, but, Professor, the Xenthari were known as a warlike species. Would they not have attacked? Xel'Voran shook his head slowly, his voice calm yet tinged with reverence. Indeed, if faced by any other species, they would have met only war. But humanity chose to save instead of destroy, disarming the Xenthari more effectively than any weapon could have ever done. The hologram transitioned once more, images now of diplomatic handshakes, a series of holographic projections displaying human diplomats and Xenthari representatives brokering an alliance that no one had ever thought possible. From this act of empathy emerged the first interstellar alliance, an event unprecedented in galactic history, Xel'Voran explained. It is often said that true strength lies in the ability to unite even erstwhile enemies. A ripple of approval passed over the diverse student body, and Xel'Voran allowed himself a brief smile before his tone grew darker. But remember, the ascent of humanity was not without bloodshed. Their rise came at the cost of relentless wars, wars that nearly plunged them into oblivion. He paused, letting the images of violent space battles and burning cities fill the amphitheater. The Dominion Wars, the resource conflicts, the internecine struggles, and, eventually, the Great Departure, all stand as testament to a people tempered by fire. In the darkened recesses of history, humanity had been forged in battle. Xel'Voran's holograms flowed seamlessly into scenes from Earth's tumultuous past. The dark skies of the 21st and 22nd centuries were painted with the despair of war-torn landscapes. The 21st and 22nd centuries were a time of great trial, the professor continued, his eyes reflecting the flicker of holograms showing ruined metropolises and nuclear firestorms. Factions tore themselves apart over resources, water, fertile land, energy, with the Pacific Coalition clashing with the Eurasian bloc. Orbital kinetic strikes leveled entire cities. A flash then showed the battered visage of a young Earth survivor amid the ruins, a visage that would one day kindle hope for a unified world. Out of the ashes arose the United Earth Directorate. Born from the desperate minds of survivors and visionaries, it was a coalition that valued unity, but not without its price. Images shifted to show brutal confrontations on Martian deserts, explosive duels between UED forces and the rebel colonists of Mars. The Martian uprising was tragic, a 5-year conflict that cost millions and scarred the collective memory of both Earth and Mars. The professor's voice softened as he recounted the tale of the colony ship Elysium. Humanity's first journey into deep space began with the voyage of the Elysium. It was on this ship that the seeds of exploration were sown, their destiny now intertwined with the stars. Holographic images showed a graceful but rudimentary vessel drifting through the void, carrying thousands of hopeful souls. But soon, they met the Krylos Dominion, a militant force that viewed Alpha Centauri not as a new frontier, but as their territory. Without warning, the Krylos attacked, reducing the Elysium to splintered fragments and wiping out thousands. A collective gasp echoed softly through the auditorium. In response, the desperate UED launched the First Fleet, a motley armada composed of retrofitted warships and repurposed civilian craft. The war against the Krylos raged for 12 long years on alien battlegrounds far from Earth. This conflict, marked by fierce ground battles and technological innovation, taught humanity one lesson above all: adaptability is the key to survival. Xel'Voran's tone grew fierce as he recounted how the Terrans had overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. They reverse-engineered Krylos technology, creating hybrid starships that outmaneuvered even the deadliest foes. In the process, humanity transformed itself from vulnerable explorers into a formidable galactic power, even as countless lives were sacrificed on the altar of progress. Then, with a subtle shift of the hologram, he introduced the Zarketh Empire, a millennia-old civilization whose very existence was threatened by the rapid expansion of the Terrans. The Zarketh Empire, proud and vast, saw humanity's swift spread as a mortal threat to their ancient order. The ensuing Dominion Wars, which began with the brutal annexation of the Luton system, pitted the Terran Federation against genetically enhanced Zarketh warriors. The room fell silent as holograms of titanic space battles filled the amphitheater. The Battle of Sirius Prime remains one of the darkest hours, Xel'Voran intoned, showing the tragic demise of the TFS Resolute and its 50,000-strong crew. Humanity's early defeats were bitter and shattering, yet, with every loss, they forged new resolve, culminating in innovations such as the Nova Cannon and Phantom Drives, technologies that turned the tide. A young student with metallic claws, eyes widened and reflective, asked, how did they overcome foes so advanced? Xel'Voran smiled cryptically. By learning from every defeat and adapting. Admiral Jara Kovac's daring ambush at Orion's belt was the turning point. Under his command, humanity crippled the Zarketh flagship, forcing their retreat. The war ended with the Treaty of Andromeda, cementing the Terran legacy for centuries to come. Even as humanity's victories echoed across the stars, a new mystery beckoned, a mystery wrapped in both triumph and sorrow. After centuries of conflict, humanity achieved something no other species had done, Professor Xel'Voran said, his voice imbued with a deep, personal reverence. They stepped back from the mantle of overt rule, a phenomenon known as the Great Departure. The hologram darkened to show Earth's surface scarred by relentless wars, cataclysmic images of the last Earth war where billions perished, yet from the embers, a unified global order was born. In the crucible of near extinction, the survivors chose to change their stars. With unyielding survival instinct, they built great starships, charted new courses into the celestial unknown, and, when they finally met the galaxy, they did not subjugate but elevated. A student, a young Salikian with delicate, shimmering tendrils, raised a limb, curiosity etching across his face. Professor, if they became so powerful, why would they step back? Why not continue to rule? Xel'Voran paused, his 4 eyes glinting as if recalling ancient secrets. That, my dear student, is the enigma of the Great Departure. Some scholars speculate that humanity, weary of the endless cycle of war, transcended physical form, becoming beings of pure consciousness. Others whisper of a hidden enclave beyond the galactic core, where the Terrans now watch and wait, guiding from the shadows. Their retreat may have been a conscious choice to let others shape the future, or to protect the galaxy from the unchecked hubris that fueled their past aggression. He leaned forward, his tone dropping to a soft, contemplative murmur. Where did they go? That question has haunted the greatest minds in the galaxy for centuries. And today, you, my young ones, are tasked with not only studying their legacy but also ensuring that their hard-won lessons endure. As the hologram dissolved into a panoramic map of the Milky Way, a star map littered with the faded trails of ancient human expeditions, the professor's voice resonated, for in the end, humanity's greatest gift was not its technology, its empires, or its wars. It was its story, a story that continues to inspire, challenge, and unite all who hear it. And as long as that story endures, so too will the age of humanity. The amphitheater lights dimmed further as the class ended, but the weight of humanity's legacy lingered like a benediction over every mind present. Outside, the Academy's vast windows revealed the night sky alive with countless starships, a silent homage to a people who had once reshaped the cosmos. The next day, still moved by the lecture, a student approached Professor Xel'Voran. Professor, tell us more about humanity's wars, about the struggles that pushed them to the edge before their great departure. Xel'Voran nodded, and once again the holographic display sprang to life, this time delving into the turbulent and brutal chapters of human history. His voice, now carrying the weight of historical gravitas and personal sorrow, began anew. The 21st and 22nd centuries were a dark period for humanity. Their homeworld, Earth, was in turmoil, divided into factions struggling for survival. The resource wars erupted over dwindling supplies, water, arable land, and energy, pitting the Pacific Coalition against the Eurasian bloc, each exchange of fire leveling cities and rendering entire regions uninhabitable. A hologram showed a devastated Earth, its once glorious cities reduced to smoldering ruins. Yet, from these ashes rose the United Earth Directorate, an alliance of scientists, engineers, and survivors who believed that unity was the only path forward. But make no mistake, their ascendancy was not achieved without incurring tremendous cost. The display shifted to scenes of Martian deserts, where rebel fighters clashed with UED forces. The Martian uprising lasted 5 brutal years. Mars, a symbol of human ingenuity and ambition, nearly broke under the strain of rebellion. Millions perished, and the wounds of betrayal cut deep into every generation that followed. A fervent debate arose among the students as an image of a raging Martian sandstorm mingled with the cries of fallen rebels. A student with bioluminescent fronds asked, "Professor, how did humanity manage to overcome such devastation?" Xel'Voran's eyes, old beyond measure, shone with a mixture of sorrow and admiration. Through sheer will and ingenuity. Even as the world burned, humanity clung to the hope of unity. The UED rose from the ruins as a beacon of survival, though its quest for order was forged in blood. For every battle lost, they learned, and every loss gave birth to more relentless strides towards redemption. He conjured an image of the pioneering colony ship, Elysium, its hull dented and scarred as it sailed through the darkness of space. Elysium was not merely a vessel, it was a lifeline for thousands seeking a fresh start. But destiny, it seems, is rarely kind. The Alpha Centauri conflict ignited when Elysium encountered the Krylos Dominion, a militant force that claimed the system as their own. In a swift and brutal assault, the Elysium was shattered, and thousands were lost to the void. Chills passed through the auditorium as the hologram depicted the fiery explosion and subsequent desperation that spurred the mobilization of the First Fleet. In response, the UED launched a motley armada, a desperate, ragtag collection of warships, re-engineered on the fly, to avenge their fallen and ensure that their fragile new beginnings survived. The ensuing war lasted 12 years, a testament to humanity's relentless adaptability. A student with metallic claws inquired eagerly, but how could such chaos yield victory? How did they triumph over enemies armed with far superior technology? Xel'Voran's response was measured and thoughtful: adaptability. Humanity was not born with perfect strength, they were forged in the crucible of their own mistakes. They reverse-engineered Krylos technology, blending it with their raw ingenuity. They developed the Nova Cannon, a weapon capable of decimating fleets, and mastered the Phantom drives, which allowed them to slip through the very fabric of reality. It was a brutal, costly evolution, but it taught them that survival was possible even against overwhelming odds. The professor's narrative then turned to the formidable Zarketh Empire. Consider the Zarketh, a civilization that ruled the stars for millennia. They saw humanity's rampant expansion as an existential threat. The Dominion Wars began when the Zarketh annexed the Luton system, a human colony that stood as a symbol of hope, and in retaliation, the Terran Federation declared war. The Battle of Sirius Prime remains one of our darkest hours, where the TFS Resolute was lost along with 50,000 souls. The hologram slowly shifted, showing the moment of the tide turning, Admiral Jara Kovac's brilliant ambush in Orion's belt. That battle, where the Zarketh flagship was crippled by an ingenious ploy, marked the moment when humanity's resilience shone through. Yet, even then, the price was dear, and the scars of battle would fuel the lessons that would lead to the great departure. As the lecture wound down, Professor Xel'Voran's voice softened, drawing the students into the more enigmatic chapters of human history. After centuries of conquest and conflict, humanity reached a decisive moment, a time when their role as the rulers of the galaxy came under scrutiny. They did not simply vanish into legend, rather, they made the unimaginable choice to depart from the galactic stage. A new hologram revealed Earth ablaze under a blood-red sky, a dying world from which survivors rose like phoenixes. The great departure was not an act of cowardice, but one of transcendence. Faced with endless cycles of war and the threat of self-annihilation, humanity chose to retreat. Some believe they ascended to a higher form of existence, others say they sought refuge in a hidden realm beyond the galactic core. What is clear is this: their influence persists, and their legacy is etched into every corner of the galaxy. A contemplative silence followed as the professor allowed the enormity of the subject to sink in. Then, his voice took on a softer, almost wistful tone. Their story is not solely one of triumph and conquest, for it is also a chronicle of pain, renaissance, and paradox. The very faults that nearly led them to ruin became the crucible in which their greatest virtues were forged. And that, my students, is the lesson we must all heed. As the session ended, the students filed out in quiet clusters, voices low with hushed wonder and speculation. Professor Xel'Voran remained at the lectern, his 4 eyes fixed on the dimming hologram of the Milky Way, which slowly gave way to a star map illustrating the ancient routes of human expeditions. "Where did they go?" he murmured, not out of mere curiosity, but driven by a personal longing to understand that mystery, a mystery that had haunted scholars for centuries. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime, a holographic message now flickered to life on the lectern. It was a communication from the Galactic Archives. Its unmistakable encryption markings confirmed what Xel'Voran had been waiting for: his request for access to the restricted human archives had been approved. The message instructed him to proceed immediately to Terminal Aurelius for instructions, a place rumored to contain the hidden truths of humanity's legacy. Under the pale glow of a distant, dying star, Professor Xel'Voran embarked on his solitary journey to Terminal Aurelius. The terminal, an awe-inspiring relic of human craftsmanship, orbited a dormant star like a silent sentinel. Its architecture was a blend of elegant curves and imposing lines, a reminder of a species that once balanced beauty with formidable strength. An automated drone, its voice calm and measured, greeted him as he stepped onto the terminal. "Professor Xel'Voran, Level 9 clearance confirmed. Please follow." The drone led him through vast corridors lined with data crystals and holographic projectors. Each chamber of Terminal Aurelius contained artifacts from a bygone age, weapons that shattered worlds, intricate schematics for technologies that defied comprehension, and haunting artworks that captured the fervor and fragility of human spirit. Finally, the drone brought him to a secluded chamber marked by a singular symbol, a stylized helix encircled by stars, pulsating with ancient power. Beyond this point, you will find answers, the drone intoned. But be warned, some truths are not easily born. Xel'Voran stepped inside. The chamber was intimate, its walls a shimmering cascade of holographic data and time-worn inscriptions. At its center, on a pedestal of dark, polished stone, lay a small, unassuming cube. As he approached, the cube activated. A life-sized hologram of a woman materialized, a figure with calm yet determined features and eyes that seemed to reflect centuries of sorrow and hope. "Greetings, seeker of knowledge," the hologram said, its voice warm with melancholy. "I am Dr. Ilara Voss, one of humanity's last leaders before the Great Departure. What you are about to learn is the culmination of our trials and triumphs, a chronicle of sacrifice made not for power, but for the promise of future unity." Dr. Voss recounted in measured tones how humanity came together in their final days. "We discovered a force, a cosmic phenomenon we called the eclipse. It was not malevolent, yet it threatened to unravel existence itself. To delay its inevitable advance, we chose to withdraw from the galaxy. We left behind artifacts, knowledge, and the hope that those who remained would rise and rally against the encroaching darkness." The hologram's image shifted to reveal vast star charts, diagrams of complex energy fields, and blueprints for what were known as the Nexus Gates, tools to connect the scattered remnants of civilizations. "Our departure was not abandonment, Dr. Voss continued. It was a covenant, a promise that our legacy, our story, would endure as a beacon for all who dared to dream of a better future." Xel'Voran's heart pounded with a storm of emotions. He had spent decades studying these legends, yearning to unlock the secrets behind humanity's dramatic exit. "What must we do?" he finally asked. Dr. Voss's holographic eyes shone with unwavering resolve. "We must embrace the legacy of unity, learn from our mistakes, and prepare for the day when the eclipse may threaten us once more. Humanity's story is not over. It is a promise, a call to rise, to guide, and to forge alliances among all species." Unsure but determined, the professor left the chamber with a renewed sense of purpose. The journey had given him both answers and more questions. One thing was abundantly clear: the legacy of humanity was a multifaceted jewel, a mixture of unparalleled ingenuity, unyielding resilience, and the humility to learn from its past. Back at the Galactic Academy the next day, Professor Xel'Voran stood at the lectern once more. A curious, eager crowd of students, now more diverse and numerous than ever, filled the amphitheater. Their eyes shone with the light of unasked questions, a desire to understand not only the history but also the deeper lessons behind humanity's rise and departure. One student, a young Zorathian with scales that shimmered like starlight, spoke up hesitantly. "Professor, you mentioned that humanity was both ruthless and compassionate in its struggles. Could you tell us more about the wars that led to their near extinction?" The professor nodded, his gaze softening as he revisited memories etched into galactic history. The hologram sprang to life, displaying haunting images of a war-torn Earth, the infant battles known as the Resource Wars. "The 21st and 22nd centuries were tumultuous," he explained. "Nations clashed for every scrap of water and arable land. the Pacific Coalition and the Eurasian Bloc waged a decade-long war that decimated entire regions. Cities fell in catastrophic orbital strikes, and the world was plunged into chaos. He paused, letting the silence speak of that unspeakable suffering, before continuing, yet from those ruins emerged the United Earth Directorate, a coalition born of desperation and hope. But the price was steep. In crushing opposition, the UED waged a brutal campaign against dissent, most notably during the Martian uprising. The conflict cost millions of lives, leaving scars on Mars that persist to this day. A student with metallic claws interjected, "How did humanity manage to persevere through such despair?" Xel'Voran's 4 eyes gleamed in the dim light. Through adaptation and unity. In the midst of catastrophe, humanity rallied under the banner of survival. The colony ship Elysium became a symbol of hope. Yet, when it encountered the Krylos Dominion, a formidable enemy whose attack was swift and merciless, humanity was forced to evolve in a manner that few thought possible. They reverse-engineered their enemy's technology and crafted weapons that were as fearsome as they were ingenious. The hologram depicted the fiery shattering of the Elysium, followed by the birth of the First Fleet, ragged warships and civilian vessels united in a desperate bid for survival. For 12 years, the war raged on alien battlegrounds. And then, just when defeat loomed over them, victory was born through cunning innovation and the desperate valor of leaders like Admiral Jarakovac. Another student, this one with delicate bioluminescent fronds, asked, "And what of the Dominion Wars with the Zarketh Empire? How did that shape the Terran legacy?" Professor Xel'Voran's tone grew somber as the hologram shifted to images of endless space battles, the titanic clash between humanity's emerging might and the ancient, genetically engineered armies of the Zarketh. The Dominion Wars were a stark revelation of humanity's dual nature. They were relentless when needed, learning from every defeat. Technologies such as the Nova Cannon and Phantom drives were conceived under the pressure of war. The bitter taste of victory was tempered by immense sacrifice, as seen in the tragic loss at Sirius Prime and the subsequent rise of the Treaty of Andromeda, which ultimately cemented humanity's rule. He then leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper that captivated the auditorium. And then, in a final act of transcendence, humanity, the very species that had once waged endless wars, chose to depart from the galactic stage. They did not vanish in defeat, but ascended, leaving behind a legacy that now guides and challenges us all. The amphitheater fell into a thoughtful hush, each student contemplating the paradox of a species that could both create and destroy, lead and retreat, conquer and yet inspire unity. Later that day, as the academy corridors emptied and the fading din of students echoed against stone walls, Professor Xel'Voran remained alone in his private study. The room was crammed with ancient texts, star maps, and relics from races long extinct. Gentle bioluminescent lights, a nod to the natural beauty of some of the Academy's more enlightened species, bathed the room in soft hues. He sat before a grand hollow table projecting the faint, swirling trail of ancient human expeditions across the Milky Way. "Where did they go?" he murmured to himself, his voice soft with both wonder and melancholy. The great departure had long been a subject of debate in scholarly circles, a mystery that transcended time and challenged every theory of existence. In his heart, Xel'Voran felt connected to that lost legacy. He, too, had once been a seeker, an academic who yearned to understand the multifaceted nature of historical truth. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime from his personal communicator. A holographic message from the Galactic Archives glowed into view, its encryption unmistakable. It read, "Professor Xel'Voran, your request for access to the restricted human archives has been approved. Proceed immediately to Terminal Aurelius for further instructions." A thrill of anticipation rippled through him. The restricted human archives were legendary, a collection of documents, artifacts, and recordings too critical and dangerous for public scrutiny. He had labored for decades, petitioning and researching, and now he stood at the threshold of revelations that might finally illuminate one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. Xel'Voran's journey to Terminal Aurelius was a solitary odyssey through quiet sectors of space. The terminal, a majestic relic of human design, orbited a dormant star, a silent testament to a once great civilization. Its architecture was an ode to both beauty and strength, sweeping curves intermingled with bold, angular supports, crafted in a style that fused art with engineering. When the professor arrived, a sleek, automated drone greeted him with a calm, measured voice. "Professor Xel'Voran, Level 9 clearance confirmed. Please follow me," the drone intoned as it glided along polished corridors lined with holographic records. These corridors were filled with relics, ancient warships skeletonized by time, ruins of planetary terraforming projects, and art pieces that celebrated both the triumphs and tragedies of the Terrans. Eventually, the drone paused before a small, unassuming chamber marked only by an intricate symbol, a stylized helix encircled by stars. "Beyond this point, you shall find the restricted archives. Be forewarned, here, truths that may test your spirit reside," the drone stated solemnly. Inside, the chamber exuded an almost sacred atmosphere. Walls embedded with data crystals pulsed softly, their gentle glow reflecting off pristine surfaces. At the center of the room stood a pedestal upon which rested a small, unadorned cube. As Xel'Voran approached, the cube activated, and a hologram of a woman materialized before him. Her visage was serene yet imbued with quiet sorrow, a living echo of humanity's last days. "Greetings, seeker of truth," the hologram spoke in a melodious yet somber cadence. "I am Dr. Ilara Voss, one of the last stewards of humanity's legacy before the Great Departure. The records you now see are not merely remnants of our past, they are a covenant of hope, sacrifice, and a challenge to those who inherit our world." Dr. Voss narrated in soft, measured tones how humanity, facing self-destruction, had chosen to rise above conflict. "In our final days, we discovered the eclipse, a force not of evil, but of unfathomable power that threatened the very fabric of reality. To deal with it, we made a choice, to depart from the galactic stage, leaving behind the tools and the knowledge to fend off this cosmic threat. We vowed that our legacy would endure in the hearts and minds of those who remained, and that unity across all species would be our greatest strength." Xel'Voran absorbed every word, the weight of Dr. Voss's message mingling with his own lifelong quest for understanding. The legacy of humanity is not one of conquest alone. It is a mosaic of sorrow and jubilation, a record of battles fought both without and within. And now, it is up to you, up to all of you, to ensure that this legacy is not forgotten. The hologram faded, leaving Xel'Voran shaken yet resolute. He left Terminal Aurelius with a fierce determination to share these truths with his students and to kindle a new era of unity and hope across the galaxy. In the days that followed, Professor Xel'Voran returned to the Academy with a trove of newfound knowledge and a heart brimming with both pride and regret. During his lectures, he wove together the intricate tapestry of humanity's past, its wars, its triumphs, and, most poignantly, its ultimate departure. He recounted tales of insurmountable adversity and bittersweet victories, highlighting not only the technological marvels and the brutal conflicts but also the resilience and compassion that defined the Terran spirit. One afternoon, after a particularly moving lecture, a group of students gathered around him. A young Zorathian, his eyes wide with anticipation, spoke, "Professor, if humanity's story is so full of contradictions, of savagery and salvation, of cruelty and compassion, what lesson can we learn from it?" Xel'Voran paused, his gaze drifting toward the distant starfields visible through the Academy's grand windows. "We learn," he said slowly, "that great power comes with great responsibility. Humanity, with all its faults and failings, reminds us that progress is seldom a straight path. It is lit by the flames of hardship, honed by the crucible of conflict, and ultimately, redeemed by the courage to change." Their departure was not an abandonment, it was a promise that each generation must rise, learn, and strive to create something better than before. His words resonated, echoing through the empty corridors as the students departed, each one taking with them a piece of that legacy, a spark of hope, a fragment of wisdom, a call to embrace unity over division. And in that moment, Professor Xel'Voran understood that history, for all its scars and losses, was a living guide, forever urging new generations toward a brighter future. Years passed in the Academy, and the mystery of the great departure, the legacy of humanity, and the infinite possibilities of the cosmos remained subjects of endless debate and research. Yet one truth lingered in every lecture hall, every quiet study, every whispered conversation beneath the eternal stars: humanity's story was not confined to the pages of history. It was a call, a beacon of resilience, unity, and ceaseless hope. Late one evening, as Professor Xel'Voran watched a newly commissioned holovid recording of ancient Terran space voyages, a montage of blazing star ships, vibrant colonies, and moments of silent courage, he felt a profound connection with that long-lost species. In the quiet solitude of his study, illuminated by the soft glow of a holographic star map, he whispered, "Their legacy endures not in the might of their empires, but in the courage of their hearts." And far away, among the scattered survivors of humanity's grand experiment, voices continued to inspire. The ancient fleet still traversed the void in legends and in whispered transmissions, a promise that one day, when the galaxy faced its darkest hour, they might return to guide and unite the stars once more. For now, the echoes of humanity's past mingled with the promise of a future yet to be written. And in every heart that beat beneath the endless sky, the legacy of their story, of both conquest and compassion, burned like an eternal flame, challenging all to believe that even amid the vast, indifferent night, hope would always shine through.